A very warm welcome to all of our attendees this morning, and also a very big thank you to IOPSA as well as FEM for hosting these Toolbox Talks. The tips to continually prevent COVID-19 has become a feature of our Tuesday morning Toolbox Talks purely because COVID is still around, and also we want to encourage everyone to use these protocols not only to prevent COVID-19, but other illnesses or potential bacteria, surfaces, cross-contamination from the likelihood of any occupational disease. So washing your hands regularly with soap and water for 20 seconds, using an alcohol-based hand sanitizer if this is not available, not touching your eyes, nose, or mouth with unwashed hands, adhering to any social distancing if somebody is sick, and then covering your cough or sneeze with a flexed elbow or a tissue and making sure that you bin that as soon as possible. Again, cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched objects and surfaces, and doing your part within your company to be vaccinated if that is possible. All of these tips, again, these protocols help us not only to prevent COVID-19, but as we've mentioned, other illnesses that could arise out of your workspace. The Toolbox Talks coming up for this month, or for the month of September, we like to call it Safetember. This is an initiative. We'll explain why we are running Safetember, or the Safetember initiative, throughout the rest of the month. But we're going to be looking at Safetember and housekeeping. What can we do in the housekeeping space in order to promote Safetember? We then do the same with the OSH Act and regulations, ergonomics, and then finally we end off with environmental safety. Please remember, these Toolbox Talks are accredited with CPD points. If you are a SIOSH member, you're going to get 1 CPD point for each Toolbox Talk. And if you are a PRB member, you get 1 CPD point for attending all 4 throughout the month. So you get a quarter of a CPD point for each Toolbox Talk that you come to. Now, our safety thought, and the safety thought is not going to change for this whole month. 0 is no accident will be the safety thought for the entire of Safetember. So please try and remember why we are trying to get 0 is no accident out there. And that is purely because of the drive and the initiative by FEM, or the Federated Employees Mutual Fund. Every September since 2019, FEM has hosted its Safetember initiative. And this is to educate the construction industry and all those who might be involved in the construction industry, which includes many plumbers. And that is to basically get you to understand what the most common accidents that lead to fatalities were and what to do to make the workplace safe. Now, this initiative is to draw attention to the high number of construction-related accidents, as well as the fatalities that they've actually incurred. But the most important thing was to educate both employers and employees on the prevention of these accidents. And so health and safety, within a nutshell, is to prevent risks and hazards from exposing your employees to the potential consequences. So it's very important that you as plumbers and ourselves as an industry, anybody that's a member of our OPSA, anybody that's a member of PRB, any plumber out there, whether you're in construction or not, it's something that you should firmly believe in, that every accident is preventable, and that an industry, even outside of the construction industry, can be achievable with 0 accidents. So 0 is no accident will be the moving forward, really the slogan that we want to use for all of our occupational health and safety Toolbox Talks. But just for the month of September, we're going to focus on what is Safetember and how we as an industry within plumbing can then promote the prevention of incidents and accidents. Now, one of the most common things, because in 2019, the safety focus from FEM was working at heights. And we know that working at heights, or falls from working at heights, was the second most common cause for fatal accidents in the construction industry. And then after that was motor vehicle accidents. So working at heights, this would be working on roofs, working on scaffolding, working on ladders, even working in mobile elevated working platforms. This was the second highest fatality rate amongst our construction industry. And many plumbers were exposed to those risks and hazards. maybe not as high as the exposure to the roofing teams, to the steel teams, or to some others who had to do the actual erection of many of the steel structures. But to a degree, you were exposed in some way or form to working at heights while on site. And in the picture on the left-hand side, we can clearly see people's attitude when it comes to working at height. It's very lackadaisy. We don't view heights really as that serious until something goes wrong. Then when it comes to one of the most important areas, or one of the areas that caused the highest level of fatalities within the construction industries, that was the motor vehicle accidents. And so Safe Timber initiatives focus on why this occurs, what can result from it, what are the consequences, and what can we do to prevent it. Now, around 10 to 20% of total incidents and accidents where fatalities occurred came basically down to falls from heights. So falling from heights was really a very high number. Almost 20% of the fatalities out of the construction industry resulted from working at height. So as a plumber, what can you do to prevent this? Well, the first thing you want to do is educate yourself as well as your employees on the prevention of such accidents. So maybe take to heart the "zero is no accident" slogan for this month. Regardless of where you're working, how you're working, if you're driving around, if you're climbing up on a ladder, standing on a roof, inside a ceiling, please remember that it is achievable to have zero accidents within our industry. Now, the housekeeping principles or the regulations on housekeeping, especially in the construction industry, come from Construction Regulation 27. And it's very, very simple. Housekeeping principles, or the rules for housekeeping on any site. And again, this doesn't mean you have to be on a site in order to apply these rules. You could be working at a private home. You could even apply these principles at your workplace or even at your offices. So the proper storage of materials and equipment. And we'll see why this is so important. Why is housekeeping so important to stop falling from heights or to stop road accidents? Is that even possible? There's so many other things that we have to do to prevent falling from heights. But we want to focus on housekeeping. Why is that? Well, properly storing materials and equipment goes a long way to preventing slipping and tripping, especially if you are working in a height area or even inside our vehicles. Keeping our vehicles clean and tidy will prevent us from being distracted by the things inside, or potentially the rubbish that's inside our vehicles from getting in the way of us operating our vehicle properly. Then removing of scrap, waste, and debris at appropriate intervals. Now, what is the definition of appropriate? Appropriate means at the right time. So what is the right time to get rid of scrap and waste or debris that is laying around? Well, the right time is before it causes an accident. So if it's starting to get out of hand and you start seeing, or even before it starts getting out of hand, you should be able to identify with the amount of waste that you are producing on your site, if you have to remove it every hour, or if every day, or perhaps every week is appropriate in your case. But what is the principle there? Making sure that it doesn't create a risk before being removed. Then ensuring that materials required for use are not placed on the site so as to obstruct means of access and egress from the workplace and passageways. Again, coming back, if you're working at heights, if you're on a scaffold, if you're on a roof, if you have objects that are in your way, well, then there is a very high possibility of slipping or tripping over them. This will then cause a lot of issues where somebody either falls to the same level or potentially falls off of a level to a lower level. And that's where fatalities could occur. Now, we might say, but we've got lifelines, we are attached with our harnesses, and so we're relatively safe. I mean, if we fall, we're going to be caught in our harness. And that is true. We obviously have fall arrest systems in place in the event that we fall. So why are there still so many fatalities? Well, when you fall, what often happens is we neglect to look around us and see what could potentially harm us in the fall. So aside from suspension trauma, which could put a large burden on your body and even cause a fatality when hanging in a harness, the harness itself could rub against something and tear. You could fall and have a pendulum effect. A pendulum effect basically means you fall in one place, but you swing outside from under your anchorage point, and you could connect into something like a beam or a scaffold, and that could also cause an impact, a fatal impact. You could also fall and drop things that are in your hand, causing injury to persons underneath you. So obstructing an egress or an access point could lead to serious consequences. It might not always lead to a serious consequence, but it does. And we can prevent those. Housekeeping will go a long way in preventing those minor injuries and accidents from becoming the more major and fatal incidents and accidents. Now, the last two principles is ensuring that all sites, especially in built-up areas, so if there's any place where the public have access to it, must be suitably and sufficiently fenced off. And the reason for that is to prevent the entry of unauthorized persons. And we've had issues before where children have gotten onto construction sites and played over the weekend when nobody's there and have died because they've fallen, maybe injured themselves, and have been stuck on site with nobody knowing that they are there. And so we could also prevent not just the injuries and accidents to ourselves, but the potential exposure to these risks of others, even though it's unauthorized persons. They should not be there. At the same time, you still need to protect them from those risks and hazards. And then the last one is ensuring that a catch platform or a net is placed under any entrance or passageway above where persons will pass under. Again, if you're working at heights, what you want to stop or prevent is the possibility of persons being struck by a falling object. And that is also one of the leading causes of serious injuries and accidents on any construction site, where it's being struck by or having something fall onto a person because of somebody else working at heights. So again, it comes down to the housekeeping principles that can go a very long way in preventing these minor, seemingly insignificant incidents and accidents, as well as preventing further high consequential incidents and accidents, such as fatalities in the industry. Again, zero is no accident. And housekeeping, and you as plumbers, we know the slogan, we know the motto of housekeeping: everything has a place and everything should be in its place. But housekeeping goes further than just waste. Housekeeping includes having good lighting, having good ventilation, having hygiene facilities that are kept clean, making sure any walkway or aisles or storage areas are clearly marked, not just kept clean, but they are clearly marked, having good stacking and storage practices, and making sure that they do not endanger life by the way that you stack or store any tools, equipment, or products. Making sure our yards, our vehicles are kept clean, and that all refuse is to be placed in the correct place at appropriate intervals. Now, as plumbers, you must know and understand the risks associated with poor housekeeping, as well as the correct principles of having good housekeeping. So let's go through them again. We spoke about safe timber and the prevention of incidents and accidents when it comes to working at heights. So if you are working at heights, and if you are working at heights in an area where, if you see on the picture on the left-hand side, you had to have a scaffold on top of a roof, you can just see the untidiness of this type of workplace. The amount of risk that you see here is bound to result in an incident or an accident. Now, many will work on a site like this and nothing will happen. And they say, well, we were safe. No, you were not safe. You might have been lucky, but that was not safe. Luck does not prevent incidents and accidents. And a zero incident and accident rate is achievable. What do we need to do, though, as plumbers? Well, for one thing, when working in a situation like this, we need to ensure that all of our cables are kept in a good condition, and then kept out of the way. So you don't want to have a cable laying across the walkway. You can make sure that you've planned it correctly to have a cable in the correct manner. Electric cables can even be taped down to prevent them from causing a tripping or slipping hazard. Then all access routes. So this is for emergency access, especially with your fire escape routes, need to be clear of debris or materials at all times. Now, what often happens is when we're on site, we're offloading something or we're carrying something to a site and we say, well, we'll put it here for now. And that's a saying that pretty much happens on every single site. When we get to a place and we say, but this isn't correct, this needs to be clean. They're like, oh, we're just putting it there for now. We need to get out of that frame of thought, because the for now thought basically says we're going to create an obstruction in the hopes that nothing happens, just for a short period of time. So you are making your work area dangerous for a short period of time where it's actually unnecessary. You didn't need to place it there, but it would take an extra few minutes to place it in a safe place. So before you place that thing down in the incorrect place, think to yourself, zero is no accident. It doesn't happen by accident. Safety doesn't happen by accident. Fatalities happen because of accidents. It takes effort and it takes constant reminders for you, your employees, and remember, everybody has that responsibility. So the onus then is really on you to say to yourself, zero is no accident in this situation. I can prevent risks and hazards from exposing me to serious danger. So don't leave items laying around in the worksite. Clean it up. Use the right tools. Make sure you also wear the right PPE. And then each person is responsible to ensure that his or her workplace is clean, because everyone has a responsibility towards safety. Even if you were not the cause of the area not being clean, it doesn't take long to clean it up, especially when we're on tea breaks, lunch breaks, or even leaving for the day to come back on the next. The most common occurrences of slipping and tripping and falling, again, it's because of poor lighting, trailing cables, unsuitable floor coverings, uneven damaged floor surfaces, contaminated floor surfaces like liquid or grease, poor housekeeping. For example, tripping or falling over something left in a walkway. Poor housekeeping will cause risks and hazards for our site. They will incur potential fatalities, but they will definitely incur similar or minor injuries and accidents that will lead to these major things. Now, these are pictures of actual sites, things that are actually happening all the time. So we have the constant reminders. We all know we are responsible for housekeeping, and we have the zero is no accident slogan. So why does it continue to happen? Well, it means more effort is needed. More effort is needed from us. And maybe we can then just ask you as plumbers in the industry, can you take the initiative? Can you make sure that housekeeping becomes a priority for you? And look at housekeeping in the prevention of major incidents and accidents. The falling from heights, we can prevent falling from heights also with the introduction of good housekeeping. Yes, there's other things to include in the fall from working at heights, making sure lifelines are in place, doing fall protection instead of fall arrest, having fall preventative measures in place. There's documentation, there's training. There's a lot of other things we can do also. But sometimes the minor things are overlooked. And so we want to remember these minor things could cause major incidents. So can you, in the next few weeks, take a look at your housekeeping? What about housekeeping in your vehicle? So we've seen how it's preventing incidents and accidents when we are working on site, especially with slipping, tripping, and falling from heights. What about within the workplace in our vehicle? Is there potential for our vehicles to be obstructed and potentially cause serious road accidents purely because of housekeeping? Well, in the picture there, you can see if our vehicle is obstructed to be operated, braking, or even using our gears. If it is obstructed, you are not going to be operating that vehicle correctly. So many company vehicles are company property. And because it's a company vehicle, it is still a workplace. So because you're using that vehicle in order to perform work, It should be an extension of our workplace. It should not be the bin where we chuck everything in from the site in order to remove it from our site. The vehicle is also our site. Then remember, and this is something we might even be embarrassed about. If your vehicle is dirty and you arrive at the site of your client, what is the first thing that they are going to see as you arrive? Well, it's your vehicle, isn't it? And we understand rainy season, and many of us, especially for us here in Harties, we don't have tar roads on the farms. It's only dirt roads. But relatively, our vehicle on the inside is still clean. It's protected from the dust from the outside, and we don't accumulate waste in our vehicle. So the outside of your vehicle, yes, it might be dirty at times, a little bit dusty, but it just means a little bit of extra effort then is required. Vehicles are also seen on public roads and in public places. This could even harm your reputation as a company. But one of the most important things is if there is a lot of junk or waste or debris laying inside the cab of your vehicle, especially in the driver area, the risk of this getting stuck under the pedals or even under your feet increases, and this can create a hazardous environment with a potential for not being able to stop, for being distracted and not seeing the vehicle in front of you, or perhaps swerving because you're trying to move things in and around your cab instead of focusing on the most important thing of driving safely. So when it comes to housekeeping and the road, we need to remember that effective housekeeping can help us to control or eliminate workplace road hazards. So removing waste from our and materials from our vehicle, keeping it nice and clean to avoid you from being distracted or possibly unable to maneuver your vehicle properly. Remember, it's not just cleanliness. It includes keeping your work area neat and orderly. Now, why is that very important? Why do we say that housekeeping is not just cleanliness, but the neatness and the orderliness of your vehicle as well? Well, there's a thing called inertia. Now, inertia means an object will continue its current motion until some force causes its speed or direction to change. So the term inertia is properly understood as the shorthand for the principle of inertia as described by Newton in his first law of motion. What does this mean? Well, if you look on the picture on the left-hand side, here is a truck carrying a block of, whether it be marble or whatever it is that they are carrying, granite in the back of that truck. If it was not strapped down, well, as you can see, it was not strapped down correctly. As soon as that truck had to stop, the thing in the back of the vehicle did not stop. The object continued on its current motion until there was another force that stopped its speed or changed its direction. In this case, the container that piece of granite was in did not stop the weight of that rock. It then continued on to the cab of the vehicle and eventually came to stop when the force of the cab was strong enough to stop the weight of the object. Now, you could see that there could have been a very high potential for a fatality if that cab had not stopped that rock. So this means that if you have tools and equipment that are not secured in the back of your vehicle, potentially in the back seat of your car or in the cab, in the boot, or even if you have a bakkie and it's on the back of the bakkie, if they are not secured down, if we don't understand the principle of housekeeping being orderly and neat, well, you could suddenly have to brake and the tools and equipment will continue to move forward, as you see in the picture, and will only stop once they hit another force to either decelerate or to change direction. We never want that to be us. We never want to be the force that stops the very thing, hitting us in the back of the head or potentially going straight through the windscreen and then causing more damage to our vehicle, or perhaps even causing a serious road accident. So 0 is no accident, again, is our safety thought for the entire month. Safe timber, when it comes to housekeeping, is something that all of us as plumbers in the industry can take to heart. We can look at our work site, we can look at our vehicles and prevent incidents and accidents from occurring from a very minor thing. Something as bad as poor housekeeping can be prevented. So thank you very much for joining us for this morning's Toolbox Talk. Obviously, coming up for the rest of September or Safetember, we're going to be looking at the OSH Act and regulations around what we can do for working at heights as well as driving on our roads. What does the Act and regulations tell us, and how can we prevent them using these documents? We then move over to ergonomics and what we can do to prevent incidents and accidents from happening there, as well as our environmental safety and what we can do there, again, in a minor way to prevent major risks and hazards. Again, our safety thought for the month: zero is no accident. Please try and take this to heart during the rest of Safetember. So we want to say thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hand it over back to you, Karim.
Thank you very much, Chris, for this informative session. I believe there are no questions from my side or from the attendees. Is there anything you'd like to add before I end off, Chris?
Just again, a very big thank you to you for always assisting us with this. And then to anybody who might want some more information on the zero is no accident or anything that is FEM related, IOPSA related, or even on the CPD points that you are getting, or any information that you hear in these Toolbox Talks, please reach out to us. You'll see our information on the left-hand side, safety@iopsa.org, info@ohss.co.za, or the WhatsApp number on 071 875 2070. Thanks.